Very official starting. Hello, everybody. This is Patty Wallenberg and Joe Maldonado from Gryphons Claw, the School of Practical Magic. Today is our last of the Hurrah October series of coffee and tea interviews with witches. And I like to dress up because that's just me. I'm like, whatever. It's the
I like
only time I get to dress up, right? So I might as well do it. But it's I have this concept. I used to, I don't anymore. What does a witch look like? So Patty Wallenberg, show everybody, what do you look like?
Come on, witches are not storybook witches no more. We're all modern witches these days, aren't we?
Exactly. We're modern, and it's funny. We had one of our interviews with Gloria, which was last week. She was saying, witches go to Publix. They
Yeah.
get, they go to supermarkets. They get soap. It's not like it's not like you wear pointy hats But I am wearing because it's a thinning of the veil. I'm wearing very veil oriented things
I
today.
see
So
that. I see
yeah.
that. I'm a little jealous today.
Yeah, well, I can throw you a veil or two anytime. But, and Patty, you have got to be, well, Gloria and you, I think, are the two proudest witches I've known. So tell me, it's not even on the description, but why do you think of yourself as witch?
So for me, witches means someone who's in sync with nature, in
Mhm.
sync with the cycles, um, kind of notice and pay attention to the sun cycles, the moon cycles, the global, the circle of life cycle,
Mhm.
from spring till this time of year where you're kind of dealing with death, the whole complete turn of a wheel, as they use the expression, but it is always being kind of in sync. And then obviously being aware also, because there's always messages and things that are coming, and most people are so very, very busy, they never even pay attention. I'm like, did you not see that we just passed three of those, cardinals today?
Yeah.
Um, Something as simple as that, um, what's happening in your world. And so many people kind of bury those things. But for me, kind of honoring being a witch is also sort of honoring your ancestors.
Mhm.
It's the people who came before us, but they also didn't have modern things. They didn't have lights and cars, so their whole lives, they didn't have Publix. So their
Those
whole
supermarkets,
lives,
oh my God.
no supermarkets, but their whole lives revolved around knowing timing,
Yes.
timing of nature, when to plant your crops, when to harvest your crops, when to cull your herds for animals, when to support childbirth so your babies would make it through,
Ah.
how to watch the seasons. And they watched the heavens, they watched the stars in the heavens. They knew when things were happening, so much more in tune to being on the earth. They knew the sacred places. They knew the strong, where ley lines maybe cross, the energy points of the world.
Mhm.
And to me, all of those encompass being a witch,
Mhm.
because it is about the energetics and the touch. To me, it's all about being very rooted on the earth, is to me what I consider being a witch.
Right. And I would have friends over and I'd be, decorating the kitchen and, putting food out. And they would say things like, "Oh, you're a kitchen witch." And
Mhm.
this is way back then. And I'd be like,
Yeah.
I'm a what?" What's
Yes.
that?" So and it's really funny too. I've been watching Enchanted Living, and they just
Mhm.
announced that their entire series of magazines next year is all going to be on witches,
Oh,
so I'm like, that is really cool. So that and just seeing the numbers in our classes and the interests and the emails that I'm getting, I'm seeing that there's a lot more interest in witchcraft, or getting back to nature, making things
Mhm.
out of herbs, like you said. We had an interview with Altera,
Mhm.
our forest witch, who was talking about making her own soaps and lotions and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely something that's there. Now let's talk about segue to the thinning of the veil.
Okay.
I know that there's been so many extraordinary experiences happening during this whole month of October. And can you explain what is the thinning of the veil?
Um, as I understand it, so this is my perspective.
Yep.
Um, the, so there is a barrier or a threshold between this realm and other realms. I firmly believe that there are other realms, whether you consider the fairy realm or the dead realm, but there are other realms besides this very physical 3D world that we live
Yep.
in.
Yep.
And again, about timing, as the world starts to change, we now see it gets darker earlier. Our harvests are done. Heck, I had frost last week.
I know.
So
I saw that.
I live in Georgia,
Yeah.
but we had 4 nights of frost. Very uncommon for us, but it's signaling to the human spirit that things are starting to slow down.
Yeah.
Things are starting to complete. So this time of year is actually the witch's new year.
Yeah.
It is the ending of the cycle.
Yeah.
It is also sort of the switching of the guard based on those of us who practice paganism. You are shifting out of a very goddess outer world vision. And this is the time when the masculine god takes over the cycle. He handles the darker side of things.
Okay.
The goddess goes to sleep. If you read any of the histories of Hecate, any of the underworld theories from Greek mythology, all of these things tie into this time of year. Talk about anything about Pluto. It's all about the underworld, and it's all about going within. And so the thinning of the veil just happens rather naturally, astrologically too, because I learned that in my research. This particular time happens between, so Samhain or Halloween is the Celtic or pagan or witches' New Year. It falls between the fall equinox and the winter solstice. So it's that in-between time. And it's not, because we have a calendar, you know, it shows up as Halloween on October 31st. It is not like that. It's fluid. It's not a hard set day that is Halloween and the energies only happen on that day.
Right.
But you will start to see those kind of shifts. And as the veil gets thinner, it is easier for those on the other side to make contact. And any, I don't know, society, civilization, people, humans, however you want to say it, any of our old ancestors, they all knew all of that. They all knew that it was coming. They were much more in tune with things. And so it was not uncommon for them to do some protections, you know, things that would keep the dead from coming back. You know, back then they were like, oh, you know, I forgot to pay so-and-so some money. He may be coming back to find me.
I see.
So things that we use at Halloween now, like jack-o'-lanterns, were their ways of keeping the light so that it wasn't so dark, so the spirits couldn't find them. And then you also have the meals. A lot of cultures will do dinners, meals. They'll set a table for the person who's no longer here. So there's a ton of different, I don't know, rituals throughout history. Different cultures have different ways of celebrating Day of the Dead. And it's interesting too, because Halloween is one of the very few pagan holidays that Christianity has not been able to override. For lack of a better word. So if you take a lot of the Christian holidays, they do have roots in paganism. It's very common to adapt and change so that as you're teaching cultures about Christianity as it comes through, think of Christmas, think of Easter. Those were pagan holidays back in the day. So in order to kind of change and move things to a more Christian focus, they adopted and changed a lot of the pagan holidays. But for whatever reason, Halloween still stands. Even though we have, so Christianity has, is it the All Saints Day is November 1st, isn't it?
Yes.
So they have tried very, very hard to eliminate that pagan aspect of the dead and the bones and the skeletons and all the undercurrents and under things. But it still to this day still remains.
Yes, it does. It does.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
the veil gets thinner. I can certainly share my many experiences over the last few weeks, but
mm-hmm.
has anything like that occurred within your life as far as somebody coming through the
Not
veil, reaching out to you,
right.
saying, yeah,
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, sometimes they'll come in dreams.
yeah, dreams is,
So dreams are, most people pay attention to your dreams around now. It's a huge way for them to communicate.
mhm.
I also do, I do a ceremony every year around Halloween honoring those who have passed.
Okay. What kind of ceremony do you do, or is that something you're going to talk about in class?
We could talk about it now too, and
Okay.
then I'll have more for class. So I do one, and I write it for a few of my friends. So a lot of it involves honoring those who have passed. So
Mhm.
I'll actually do a candle ritual, and I'll look at where the moon is and put a little slant about what's happening. So I'll look up the moon before
Mhm.
class on Saturday.
Mhm.
But basically, it's kind of bringing out your old photos or writing their
Oh,
names down and going
interesting.
through. And it's not just people, it could be your pets, it could be places, maybe things that are lost to you that you can't access anymore. I miss
Yeah.
my cat, I miss my dog, I miss my grandfather,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
whoever it may be. And not only just honoring them, but also sort of creating an altar where you bring in a lot of the nature stuff from now.
Yeah.
So leaves and pumpkins and things that remind you of Halloween.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll incorporate tarot cards with it.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
Candle,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And you
and
are, for those who don't know, Patty is really big on sigils. She's taught classes about those protection sigils, all kinds of sigils, making your own sigils. And then, of course, there's the tarot cards, which you've also taught, class 1, 2, and 3. They're all recorded.
yes.
But those are great also. So what
Mhm.
you're talking about incorporating into your altar are things that you incorporate and
We
have
all
in your life.
teach
Right,
exactly,
right. So
and
we
it's
and
and
we all
it's
have different
nice.
things. Hmm.
Yeah, and everybody does their own thing. So I kind of write it up and then I sort of leave it for you to decide how you want to personalize things. It's always about how you want to do things.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, but it is a time, it's funny because, everyone gets together for their seances and
Yeah,
everybody gets together for I do a New Year's tarot read every year
you
at
do. Yeah,
Halloween,
yeah, yeah,
and I write it down. And I
yeah,
write down what it meant because I used to just write down the cards and then look at it the next year and be like, well, the cards are here. What did I think about them? So I
yeah,
now also
yeah,
write out what I thought about them. So,
yeah,
but every
yeah,
year I do a New Year's reading. I ask what my New Year is going to look like, what's happening for me.
yeah,
And I go back at the end of the year and it's nice to kind of go back and see how much of what I predicted actually came true. What did change? What did happen? How are things changing for me?
yeah.
So it's a really interesting time. It's funny because so many cultures um, have words or poetry or any kind of thing about the
Yeah,
ancestors
yeah,
and dead and the fairies being able to come through.
yeah,
Um, you know, so it is a really special time of the year,
yeah.
and it doesn't mean that you can't talk with them at any other time of the year, but it is
Sure.
believed that it is easier.
You
And
know,
also,
I
there's
find that like you said, it's easier. I almost find like they're on autopilot. Like I'm dreaming and like boom, wait a minute, I wasn't thinking about you. Subconsciously you could say I was, but what are you doing? Why are you doing what are you
right.
in my dream for?
Yeah.
Or a book or a
Are
photo
you here?
falls down. Why is this in front of me right now? So
Yeah.
it feels like a lot of autopilot from the other side, whether and or fairies too. What I mean, I know acorns are falling, but what's this ton of acorns that's in a circle doing in front of my door? It's in a perfect circle. What is going on here?
Yeah.
So things like that. Um,
Yeah.
on for the class now, I know we've moved the class around, and I think
No,
we
sorry.
specifically, Patty and I were talking. We wanted to make this class very very special and very succinct in line with, the holiday of our most favorite holiday, Halloween. And so we moved the class to be in the evening at 6 o'clock on
Yeah.
Saturday. Um,
Yes.
so if we can talk just a little bit about, I know we're talking vaguely today as far as the thinning of the veil and
Sure.
what's going on. What sort of things will we be able to walk away with on Saturday evening after your class?
Well, we will go meet our ancestors. So we'll
Oh,
do
oh,
meditation.
cool. Okay.
We'll go, even if you don't know who they may be, we'll
Yeah.
go and we'll go. I always like a nice meditation. It's a great time of year to do it. The
Yeah.
doorway's a little bit easier for those who maybe don't meditate super well, maybe don't
Yeah.
get a lot. So the opportunity might be kind of good.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit about Halloween, its roots, because it's not a pagan holiday. It's an adapted pagan holiday. It's got roots even further back
Yeah.
than the pagans.
Yeah.
They can trace some of the stuff back into even Egypt time, Greek time, ancient Greek.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm also kind of talk a little bit about astronomy a little bit. It's interesting, the Pleiades that are very spiritual for a lot of cultures. Turn up. We'll talk about other ways of accessing the veil, because the thinning of the veil is not necessarily rooted to a holiday. There are other avenues in accessing a thinning of the veil. There are other crossroads and thresholds.
So for example, if something is occurring during this time, and it's the thinning of the veil period or thinning of the veil phenomenon, we can learn how to kind of go back and finish the interaction, conversation, questions, whatever it is that was unfinished during this time, correct?
Yes, can do that too. Absolutely.
Okay.
Sitting and doing, and again, it doesn't have to be Halloween time. The thing about Halloween is that everybody's brain or everybody's thought process, the thought about Halloween and the dead and the ancestors is really strong right now, which is probably why the breakthrough is so much easier.
Yeah.
Because so many people are thinking about it.
Yeah.
And so that grouping of energy, that focusing of energy of accessing or wanting, I want to hear from my grandma, it is kind of makes it a little bit more amplified. And I think that is also part of the reasoning why accessing becomes so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. If I could just note to everybody that if you have any questions, there's a chat window that's open down there. You're more than welcome to type in your question at the bottom. Also, the link for the class for Saturday that we're talking about is at the very top of the chat window. So you could just click on there and you'll get a little bit more information about the class and what we're going to be offering then. And you can also register at the same time. So I just wanted to do that. So back to chatting. Can you show what that glorious broom is behind you and tell us a little bit about that? And how does that actually come to play with what is going on now? Thinning of the veil.
Well, this lovely broom, and I adore my broom, came to me. I was in Salem for a weekend, definitely a place of witches. And I was actually there 10 days or so, give or take a few days before Halloween. So super special place to go. And so much focus and energy and direction given to witches in that area. Strong history of witches. Kind of sad, some of the history of the witches there, but it's interesting that even though they tried to get rid of them from Salem, witches are still there. And they have their witchy stores. And so your brooms, you are talking about New Year's. And so brooms have a lot of different uses. Mm-hmm. I use this broom. This is my welcome in my house broom or get out of my house broom.
Okay.
So I leave this always at my front door. And if it's down on the floor with the little bits on the ground, it means people are welcome to come in. And if I have my broom sitting upside down, chances are go away.
Or leave. Go away. Okay.
Get out.
Yeah.
So, but there are those who will specially make certain brooms with different thoughts, different energies.
Yeah.
I'm not one of them. I'm not crafty. But so I do buy them instead.
Yeah,
And
but if I can just pause that and tell everybody she's not crafty, but yet, Patty is, I want to say, I'm going to say, Patty's your badass witch who goes into houses, people's houses, and deals with very heavy, negative, very bad energies. So yeah, maybe she can't, sew a handkerchief,
no,
but,
no, but I can clean out. So
but she sure does clean up and clean out very well. She's very powerful, very strong, and I know I've known her for a very long time, and just from her experiences, whether she travels a lot, so whether she's traveling or staying put, her remote viewing capabilities are astronomical. They're amazing. They're spot on in every corner of the house. So I can see how, you do the broom up thing. Now, I personally have all my brooms, and I have a couple of them. I have one that I have made because we had a broom making class, and I made
yeah,
my own broom.
did.
I have that. I have my welcoming broom is my brand new cinnamon broom.
Ah, there you go.
And the one that I actually use a lot is a very soft broom that the bristles are they're just like feathers, but they're not. I don't know what material it's out of, but I use it to cleanse out negative energies and,
Correct.
that of people that have come through. We're selling our house. So as they come
Give,
through,
give it a job.
right. I want to
I
sweep all
like
that stuff out. Right, right, right,
I
right.
like giving my tools a job. I like asking them if they will protect the house or cleanse the house. And because it is New Year's, there are those who will clear their house, sweep it clean from everything, kind of start fresh.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of, because of the darkness, bonfires were really big during this time of
Yes.
season.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite ways to cleanse and remove things is to burn it.
Yeah.
Write it down and burn it. Get rid of the
Yep.
things you no longer need,
Yeah. And I think
I-
again that's association because I do that, but I do it on New Year's Eve. That has been my ritual for I don't know how long. That is
and then
my list.
sure.
I write it, I burn it in the fire pit. It goes, and then
There
it's
you go.
done. Yeah,
But that's a calendar that's not necessarily in sync with the cycles. Is
correct,
it?
correct. But however, I must say, over the last few weeks, I have been drawn to cleanse and purge papers that no longer serve me. And my bonfire's been going almost every other night. Yeah, it
Yes.
takes me a day to clean up after because there's ashes all over, then you hose
Yes.
it, and then you got smudge all over. So it doesn't
Yes.
do well when people are looking at your house to try to buy it. But, it's the sign out front says there's a witch inside. So
Exactly.
I'm
Exactly.
burning a lot, So
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that up.
So that's also something that happens at this time of year, the bonfires and the cleansings and
Yeah.
just cleaning out things. And then, the honoring of the spirits
Exactly.
also too, because we may not recognize, but they kind of help and guide us from the other side.
Yes.
And I think as far as old humanity would be, this is a time where they finally get to pause. They're tired, they've worked hard all season, they're hunkering in for the winter, and it's the first time they really get to slow down and pause and recognize everything that happened for them for the year.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is also part of why the ancestors are able to be so strongly seen and heard, because you were finally able to pay attention to them.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they weren't there all the time. And then, and then there's these offerings that are made in the way of food or wine or tobacco, and for all the beings from the other realms. And it's not just the ancestors who've passed. Fae folk, the fairy folk have all been really strong allies too. And so they are also included in a lot of the old rituals.
Yeah, yeah. Have you encountered any fae folk that are not in favor of something that you were doing or about to do or in the process of doing? Just a curious question. It's not on here either.
Sometimes. Sometimes they kind of hang out. They're always happy about a garden and garden places.
Yeah.
So I always try to do a nice little garden for them. I make little fairy houses, little rocks, stuff
Yeah,
for
yeah,
them
and
to
I
come
love your
hang.
pumpkins on your fireplace too. I'm sure the fairies like that too.
They do. They live outside, but yeah,
Yeah.
But the fairies are in the house. The pumpkins usually live outside, but they're here today. And
Awesome, awesome.
but they also are a strong connection for me. I'll see them in the house. I'll see them in a lot of places where I live if I stay still for a
Yeah,
while.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
And I
but
do want to mention one thing before we go, and then we can open up everybody to questions live. But when Patty was visiting, our house has had an issue with flooding, and so Patty said, "Let's go to the front of the house and talk to the guardians. You know, there's guardians." And I said, "Yes, I do. I've been talking to them." So Patty walks to the front of the house. She says, they're pointing in the wrong direction. They're guarding the wrong place. That's why you're flooding out. So let's talk to them, have them turn around and redirect all the water to get away from the house. And so we did that. And as you all probably know, we had Hurricane Ian here and all the houses flooded out. Our neighbors flooded out. We didn't
yes.
flood out at all, nothing. And I mean, our neighbor's house the water was up to the door. The other neighbor, their water reached our fence line, chain link now. So there's nothing that's gonna bar that water from coming over. Reached our chain link and didn't come over. It stopped right there. So, there's something to be said about about Patty, and I think in the way that we communicate, with them, the relationship that we have with those spirits I'm going to say on the other side, I think that, to me, I always see this invisible kind of ethereal, smoky like veil, and I can call it a veil, but it's like I can put my hand through it, and it's almost like I can shake hands with them, and then if I want to look to see what's being protected, the above perspective, which, you and I were talking about when you were here last visiting. So there's all these different perspectives. I'm sure all of this is going to blend together and it's all going to flow on Saturday. And I know you have a curriculum plan specifically for that topic. But also, as all of you may or may not know, those that have been to our classes, we do have this kind of open mic thing where if you don't mind being recorded, you can ask a question either during or after class, and we can have a discussion on that topic. So with that being said, I'm going to close the recorded part. Yes, already. I know. It like, boom, time flies just like that. And say thank you, everybody that's listening to this recording. If you're coming to the class on Saturday evening at 6 p.m. live, it'll be an amazing, amazing experience. I guarantee you. Patty, from my heart, thank you so much for doing this interview.
You're very welcome. Happy to be here. See you all on Saturday.
See everybody. All right, so that's going to be paused.